however you call me, I don't really care. And welcome back to World of Tanks, the test server 1.4. Now, unfortunately, this video couldn't be released yesterday because the test server was once again not available to be played on. That is because they installed the third iteration of the test server. And the third iteration of the test server actually brings some changes, mainly Frontline is back on this test server and you can actually play it for 15 hours. Until then, the next episode is going to be taking over, or I'm not sure, maybe the test server is going to end soon. Third iteration, that's pretty much close to the end. That's when they have a lot of data collected already and when they can actually move on over and plan the release for the patch to the live servers. North America and Russia usually are the ones that get the update first. I'm not sure if America gets it before Russia, but those two servers usually get the update very, very early on, before the Europeans most of the time. So, moving on, today we're going to take a look at the EBR 90. Now, this is the very first wheeled vehicle that looks very much like the premium version. If you remember the premium Panhard EBR 75, the chassis was basically identical. You had the four set of wheels, the two wheels in the middle, which allowed you to go in cruise mode and into rapid mode, and they were both these steel wheels that had some very interesting, or have some very interesting looks if you if you look at them closely. Then basically this tank, frontal and the back are almost identical. It's like sloped upwards and it's basically just one vehicle that looks the same on both sides. If you just turn the turret over to the other side, you wouldn't be able to tell if this is the back part of the vehicle or the front. Actually, the lights do give you kind of a bit of a idea where the front of the vehicle is, obviously the position of the turret, but other than that, you could be quite irritated. This is the thing, I'm always kind of interested to see, in this kind of tank design, are there two drivers or is there only one? Because in the game it tells us there's only one driver, but if you're trying to go backwards very, very quickly, and you have like the view slits over here as well, just like here, and it's basically the same, are you going to be the designated driver for the front and the back? Because that seems to be quite a stretch. It's quite difficult to change in combat very quickly over to the other seat. So I think in real life it probably would have been seated by someone else. So I don't think it would be two drivers, but probably another personnel who would be sitting in that position as well. Maybe the radio operator, who could also be a driver in this game at least. So moving on. This vehicle, as always, all things are maybe still subject to change. Although it's the last iteration of the test server, I think they might still change some things. They changed a couple of things, I think view range wise and speed wise. They changed a couple of characteristics on all of the wheeled light vehicles. Other than that, like, keep in mind all the equipment that we're looking at right here is the fully upgraded equipment, with the exception that this tank actually has a very interesting selection of guns, because the 90mm gun that you have on this one is basically, you have two 90mm guns as options. Now the tier 9 variant that you'll unlock later on, which will cost you about 43,000 experience to unlock, that gun only gives you a little bit of a benefit of a bit of a higher rate of fire. You can see 7.69 rounds per minute instead of the 7.5 rounds per minute, and a bit of better pen with 3mm better on the standard round side and about, I don't know, 7mm better on the other side. Aim time is also a little bit better, but other than that, the gun is basically identical. The thing though is that you fire heat with this premium shell, with its premium shells. And what's very interesting is that the previous gun runs on APCR, while this gun runs on AP shells. But I think that that the velocity of the AP shells on the tier 9 gun are identical or better than on the tier 8 gun. But what I wanted to say is that the stock gun on this vehicle actually isn't too bad. It's still kind of competitive in the sense of, well, you are not going to have a huge step up on pen, which on the other hand also is kind of disappointing that you don't have a bigger bigger chance of penetrating tanks, because your pen is only 185 millimeters instead of maybe 200 millimeters. So your pen actually does not get upgraded very substantially. That is very important. So moving on, we're gonna go through the characteristics and then we're gonna go into the game and try this bad boy out. So average damage per shot, 240 to 90 millimeter gun. No big expectation there. 185 millimeters of penetration. Now, the thing is kind of disappointing that it's not a bigger jump from the tier 8 variant to the tier 9. That's usually where the tanks really get to be very different from their predecessors. Tier 9 tanks usually have something very special, like guns that are extremely good because it's very close to tier 10, but the vehicle has some other backdrops. But the guns usually are very decent. This time around, the gun, I'm not too sure what should I say about this. Like 185 millimeters of pen is not too impressive, but since you're driving around and, you know, very quick, I don't think it's going to hurt you that much, because you'll most definitely not shoot vehicles from the front. And I don't think you'll be firing at Mouse or Type 5 heavies anytime soon in any kind of environment. I don't think you want to do that. Then, moving on, the turret reverse speed gets upgraded once more, 71.96 degrees per second. That will give you a better chance of being able to hit your targets and not always flunk your shots because you're just way too fast and your turret doesn't get around in time. Gun depression, now, it kind of follows the scheme of the previous iterations of the vehicles. It lowers its gun depression. Previously, like, you started at 12 degrees of gun depression, now you're at 6 degrees of gun depression. Obviously, the vehicle is rather low, so don't expect this to be a very good ridgeline warrior. You'll be moving around most of the time anyhow, so you won't notice it that much, I think. Now, the aim time is very interesting. Now, aim time here obviously has been boosted with a very good crew, with equipment, and this equipment is basically based on very aggressive scouting. I have a gun laying drive installed, I have vents installed, I have optics installed to give me the best view range for, you know, an active scout. And 1.17 seconds aim time, that's pretty impressive. 0.35 at 100 meters dispersion, that's pretty, oh, that's decent, that's actually good. And 1.9k average damage per minute. Now, the DPM is nothing to write home about. I don't think the damage that you do is the main objective of this vehicle. Main objective is always going to be being an active scout. It's going to be quite difficult from time to time, especially if the maps do not allow you to be mobile enough. And once again, 1150 HP at tier 9. Now that is absolutely horrendous. Tier 8 light tanks with tracks have 1000 HP already, so you are on the very low end of the spectrum. You have the least amount of HP and the worst armor to boot. So basically, if you get shot at and you get hit, well, goodbye to you. So once again, mobility is your armor, and you can see the tank actually gets lighter, or the vehicle gets lighter. It's only 14.75 tons, while the tier 8 was something along the lines of 16 or 17 tons. So it gets lighter, it gets a better engine, and what you get is more speed. 65 kilometers per hour in normal mode. If you're running in rapid mode, you'll get 85 kilometers per hour. And the very interesting part about this vehicle is going backwards and forwards with this kind of chassis and with these kind of wheels is basically identical. It's the same. And this is where it's going to get very interesting. When you can run your tank forwards and backwards the same speed, that is going to be very, very much helpful in battle. You can see the springs right here for the suspension. Looks very, very cool from the side, I think on the back. Yeah, they have it as well. Very, very cool. Now the wheel turning angle is also better, 33 degrees. Instead of the, I don't even know, was it like 24 or something like that? So the mobility part has really taken a step up once more. Rapid mode 85 kilometers per hour, that's just mad. That's crazy when you're running around. Just think of it. I've played a couple of games with standard tanks where I had to fight these guys, and when this vehicle is running past you with 85 kilometers per hour, you're just like, what the hell is going on? Once again, chaos is your main ally in those situations. Now the concealment gets buffed substantially. Your vehicle is going to be very, very nicely camouflaged. 43.55%. 43.55% being stationary and on the move. Now that is crazy. On the move, that is obviously for light tanks, that's the speciality that they have, having the same kind of camouflage when they're moving. And this is very important because with the spotting of 400 meters, now this is about the average view range of a tier 8 medium tank with good equipment and stuff. I think you are going to need all the concealment that you need. They upgraded the spotting a little bit still, but 400 meters view range with them using camouflage and maybe even sitting in the bush is going to be quite difficult to spot them very quickly. But you have the speed to be very aggressive, to rush them in the position that they are, and that will definitely give you the benefit most of the time. But still, view range, once again, I think if they would have buffed the view range to, I don't know, 450 meters on this tank, it would have been just way too overpowered, because you have a tank that's fast, it can run around, spot people very easily, and then you just have like a very one-sided battle where this tank just will run around at like further distances and still light people, and it will just kind of ruin the balance. So that's all I think about this vehicle, or that's my thoughts on this vehicle right now. I'd say we jump into a battle, check it out for ourselves, and then we can have a verdict on what this vehicle could be like on the final live server. The game that I've prepared for you guys is basically a very accurate representation of what matchmaking on the live server could actually be like. Now, this is the joy of when you're playing the test server very late in its stage, where it's almost over and everyone has already tested out the lightly wheeled tanks. This is when you are actually going to be able to play against real vehicles that you usually see in battle as well. So it's not going to be only these lightly wheeled tanks, it's also going to be all the other vehicles included. I'm the only lightly wheeled vehicle on our side. They have one on their team. But other than that, it's basically standard tanks, and this is exactly how it's going to be. This is what the game will probably look like in a month from now when these vehicles do come out. Some of them will rush them, some will probably, you know, free XP their way to tier 10s immediately, but this is exactly what it's probably going to be looking like. So moving on back to the gameplay, I just wanted to give that real quick off, and what you can see right here is, you know, obviously it's a test server, not everyone is running their best crew on their best vehicles, but we have a very good crew and we are spotting this Foch B without getting spotted in turn. We have 43.7% increase on our concealment, keep that in mind. So we can actually stop right here, 443 meters. We just spotted him previously. We have 400 meters view range, and we can actually fire at him. Now, we're playing on Karelia, and you know Karelia doesn't have like these huge open plains, but the very next best thing is the northern part of this map. What you can see right here is that if we take a look at this place right here, you have quite a lot of room to maneuver. I'm using the cruise mode right now because I want to have the best speed when I get close to these guys. And what I've noticed with 85 kilometers per hour, when I get close enough to them, right there they actually do spot me. I can actually spot them the entire time, and they do try to shoot me, but 85 kilometers per hour, now that's rather difficult, especially if a target is just so small. Now, keep in mind, I don't have a lot of support behind me, I only have a standard B, but the idea behind this vehicle is that you do spot these vehicles by running back and forth, you know, spotting them for your team. They sit in the back and they take him out. Now, right here, it doesn't really work out. This is the problem. If this is not going to work out on the live server, you know, when people just don't support you, you're gonna have a pretty bad time. This is just how light tanks usually work. But the thing is, the other light tanks usually are a bit more competitive in their nature, with having like at least a gun that can be used or utilized in certain scenarios much better than this vehicle has. Now, 185 millimeters of penetration, it's nothing to write home about. It's not too bad either, but at the same time, you're not going to be able to frontally pen IS-7 or even a T10. It's going to be quite difficult. What you can see right there is it's quite difficult sometimes to still have the control of the vehicle. You just have to get used to it. And what you'll probably be using most of the time is this auto aim feature. This auto aim feature is much better than the standard auto aim, but it will not lead the targets. But it's still better since the shell velocity on this vehicle is rather high. You will still be able to hit them more often than not, and you can focus on your driving. That's very important. I've noticed that I had to do that when I was playing this vehicle. What you can see right there is that the turret traverse was not going fast enough so I could actually hit him. That's something you have to keep in mind. Turret traverse is not fast enough with the rate, with the mobility that you have on this vehicle, with the turn rate and all that kind of stuff. Now, obviously I didn't expect to get hit right there, but very experienced players will be able to hit you, and you're not one of those invincible tanks. You can see right there, 2 times we got hit by high explosive shells from the Tortoise. We got lucky right there. Our shell just, our wheel just absorbed the damage of the Object 268, but you have to be very, very careful indeed. Once they do actually hit you and knock out a wheel, you're only going at 60 kilometers per hour top speed, and when they hit you like that, 465 damage, that does hurt very, very much. High explosive right there. It was actually a pen. But now this is where this vehicle does actually shine. You can see the chaos that we have just created. We're still in rapid mode. If we would have been in cruise mode, we actually could have been maybe a little bit more flexible right here. But we run around, we active spot them, we get the spotting damage, and we get some shots into the enemy vehicles as well. Unfortunately, the standard B does take us out, and I think this is something you'll find yourself in quite a lot in these kind of situations, when you decide to break through their lines and you actually manage to make a huge mess of their defense. Some vehicles will be able to hit you, and when they start hitting you, they start knocking out your wheels. You're basically a dead fish on ground, like on the shores, because basically what you cannot do is you cannot outrun them anymore, but you can still spot them. So the spotting damage in this vehicle, which you'll be doing most of the time, is coming at the end when you're breaking through a line of vehicles that are sitting somewhere in ambush. That is where this vehicle is the most successful, and that's where it actually lies best, because these tanks over there now are just going to be opening fire on them while they still have to recollect themselves, and they on the other side over there can actually knock them out as well. This turned out to be a victory, but I did stop recording after I got knocked out because I left the match. But this is actually the most accurate representation of what a game in this tank or in this kind of line of vehicles is probably going to be like. And it's kind of difficult to say if I'm a huge fan of lightly wheeled tanks. I have the feeling that maybe if I get used to them more, if I play them more, if I play them on the live server more with their you know their place where they should be played and how they should be played, I think I will really enjoy them. But at the current state where I have a limited knowledge of these vehicles, by just playing a couple of matches with them, you know, and not grinding through the ranks with all the stock kind of things running around, I'm not sure. The thing is, you probably need to take a lot of time to be able to grind these vehicles. They'll release the premium EBR 75 sometime soon probably, and you can train your crews to get ready for these vehicles. I do think they do fit into the game somehow. With their balance right now, if there's only one of them running around, I think it doesn't seem to be that horribly imbalanced, because if you have several of them running around, your artillery will not be safe, which I actually don't have anything against, but still, arty will not be able to do their job. The tank destroyers will get lit very quickly because they're just run through the lines and it's pure chaos, right? But one of those can have very much a structured impact, like a structured chaotic impact. Now that is like two very opposite things to say in one sentence. I understand that, but I think like it's structured chaos, because when you can decide when to unleash the chaos, you are basically in control of the situation. And you're playing such a vehicle, and they're actually pushing, your team is moving up, and the enemy team is holed up somewhere in the back of the map. And you know how difficult it is to get these vehicles out of the deadlock, because they have moved up into positions where they're already safe, where they're secure because of maybe a ridgeline or the bushes, and you can't spot them. When you have a tank like this that just doesn't give a shit about any of those things and just pushes right into and suicide bombs maybe right into the entirety of the enemy team that's sitting in the back, you can basically destroy these deadlocks, and that is, I think, a good thing, because it will make the game more dynamic. But we'll have to see how it's going to be turning out in the end. I think the EBR Panhard 90 is the very first taste of a very, very nice end game for the last two tiers, the tier 9 and the tier 10, and I think they're balanced enough to be introduced like this into the game. And yeah, I think we're gonna move on to the tier 10 now, and we're gonna focus on that, and I'm gonna bring out the preview as soon as possible. I hope you guys did enjoy this. As always, comment, like, and subscribe. I love to hear your guys' opinion on this vehicle, on these vehicle types. What do you think? Do you think they're balanced enough? Do you think they should be overworked a little bit? Do you think they're too fast? Whatever it is, write it down in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys on the next one.